Hi, we still have a few slides for the international portfolio topic that we wanted to finish today. We don't have too much left, and so we are on slide number 54. So we wanted to talk about international equity market. And equity market, basically we group them into the so-called developed market, and then we have the so-called emerging market. For the developed market, we are talking about 3/4 of the market capitalization globally being classified as the developed market, like the Western European market, Japanese market, etc. Those are developed market. Next slide. We also have emerging market. Emerging market are some examples like Indonesia, Malaysia, and South Africa, etc. Those are the example of the emerging market. And emerging market combined together account for about 1/4 of the global market capitalization. And usually when the national income per capita is relatively low, then we classify that as the emerging market. For example, Mexico. The GDP per capita is somewhere around, if my memory serves me correct, around 10,000 to 15,000 US dollar per capita. So that is kind of middle income level. Then we classify that as emerging. And on the other hand, United States, we have more than 50,000 dollar per capita. Then we are high income nation, so we are developed market. Another criteria to separate emerging market and developed market is so-called investability. I mean, how investable for international investor to invest in this particular national stock market. And for example, another reason why the Malaysia stock market is not a developed market is just because the Malaysia government has imposed quite a lot of restriction on how much share that international investor would be able to purchase for those Malaysia company. So investability is another criteria. In general, less restriction the one particular nation imposed, then it tend to have a higher investability, then it tend to be classified as a developed market instead of an emerging market. And in addition to look into the income per capita and also look into the investability, there are other criteria also quite important. The next slide is the so-called notion of the liquidity. If a stock market barely have any kind of trading, that means that's very low liquidity, then it really doesn't provide too much of an opportunity for international investor to go to this nation to invest. So certain level of liquidity need to be there. Okay, here we're talking about you want to buy a liquid asset, and at the time you want to buy, you want to be able to sell this relatively liquid asset when you don't want to invest. For international investor, this is a very important property. And one way to measure liquidity is to look at the so-called turnover ratio. That would be the dollar amount of the stock market transaction over a year divided by the market capitalization. And in this particular ratio, depends on the nation, depends on the time. Sometimes it can be extremely high, very crazy. Like in year 2012 in China, this ratio is 164 times. That means that on average, every 2 days, the entire market capitalization have been turned over once. And so every day that 50% of the share of any company would get sold. And so it's pretty crazy. And this ratio can be as low as just like 2, like for Bahrain in the year 2012. So this liquidity range could be very, very wide. And next slide. Another measure that's important for international investor is the so-called market concentration. Market concentration refers to the notion that to what extent, what kind of availability in terms of the selection of the stock that one particular national market would be able to offer. One example, let's say Netherlands. Netherlands is a very developed market, okay, extremely high GDP per capita, a strong nation in Europe. And it has a lot of internationally well-known big companies like Philips. But this nation just doesn't have too many of the public traded stock that list in its national stock market. And when you only have a few companies for investing, then we say that this market is highly concentrated in just a few stocks. And often the case that this is not really a very attractive feature because, for international investors to set up an operation in Netherlands, they wanted to go there and have enough investment opportunity in order to justify the research resources they put into there. And when you don't have enough of the opportunity set, and with an extremely high concentration, that kind of dilute the value of this national market from an international portfolio manager's perspective. Next slide. And now let's talk about cross-listing of the share. What does it mean by cross-listing? Cross-listing means that one company stock is not just listed in one particular national stock market, it's also listed in another national stock market. And for example, let's say TSMC, okay, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturer Corporation, is not only listed in Taiwan but also listed in New York Stock Exchange. Okay, so this is qualified as one example of the so-called cross listing. That means that one company had its share to list on more than one national stock market. And in recent years, the number of the firms doing cross listing have been going up like crazy. And why so many companies now they want to cross list their stock? Next slide. We list a few advantages. One is to expand the investor base for a firm. Okay, if a Taiwanese firm can only list in Taiwanese stock market, then it would only have the investor base coming from Taiwan. So the amount of the potential for funding is relatively limited. But when you do the cross-listing, you are not only have the investor base coming from Taiwan, you also have the investor base coming from New York. Then suddenly you expand your investor base and give you more possibility of providing equity financing. So you can do secondary offering both in Taiwan and New York, and such that you'll be able to raise much more equity financing than just having your share listed in Taiwan. And also it would establish the name recognition. Okay, so by having the share listed in New York Stock Exchange, now the brand name of TSMC, okay, is not just known to Taiwanese, but also known to American. And if it's known in American, of course it has spilled over to be known in many other countries, because by far the U.S. economy is the biggest one. And also may offer a marketing advantage when, for example, like Samsung or LG, these are the two well-known Korean companies. And they have their share not just listed in a Korean stock exchange, but also they have their share to list in New York as well. And by doing so, that LG, Samsung become really household name, not just in Korea but also in the United States. And another example is cross-listing into a developed market like the United States. where that we have a much higher standard of security regulation, and it sent out a good signal that this is a high quality company, not just being able to list in Korea, but also is able to list in New York when the New York standard is very, very high by international standard. So it sent out a strong signal about the quality of the firm. And another advantage of cross-listing is that and a lot of international investors, let's say that they invest in New York, when they buy share of the Samsung, they just want to have a cash flow. Okay, they want the dividend, and they want the share price to go up, and they do not really want to control the board of the Samsung. So when the Samsung decide to cross-list into New York, okay, it basically make it much easier for Samsung family to protect its control in South Korea. Okay, because for those another South Korea family want to take over this firm, they would need to purchase much more of the share. Okay, so this is mitigate the possibility of hostile takeover. Next slide. And those stock offering in the United States, okay, and can be done in a direct fashion. They can just come in to the United States do the offering, and we call that Yankee stock offering. Okay. Next slide. And sometimes the offering could be done simultaneously globally. We call that global registered share. And not too many companies doing this global registered share. And one example is the Diamond-Benz and the Chrysler when they merged in the 90s. When they merge into a really large company, they have their share both listed in Germany and also in the United States along with many other countries. And their share price are simultaneously being quoted in US dollar in Europe. And also their share are fully fungible in the sense that when you buy one share in Germany, you can sell that share in the United States. You can buy it in Europe and you can sell that in US dollar. So this is another possibility for listing the shares, cross-listing across many nations. Next slide. And in this slide, I have a couple of examples of the indices. In Europe, the FTSE, the first one is FTSE 100. That's a London stock index. And then we have the CAC 40, that's a French stock index. We have Frankfurt DAX, that's a Germany stock index. IBEX, okay, this is the Belgian one. And then the Milan, that's Italy stock market. And the previous IBEX one is a Spanish one. And then the last one, the Belgian 20 index. So we have those popular European index. In the Asian, the most dominant one is Nikkei 225 index. That is a Japanese index. And we have Hang Seng index, that's a Hong Kongese index. And then we have Straits Times, that's a Singapore index. And we have SX, that's Australia stock index. So those are the popular Asian indices. And when we want to invest in those foreign stock, national stock, we live in the ETF world, a lot of ETF availability out there, and iShare MSCI has more than 20 of the country-specific ETF, and such that we'll be able to buy and sell all in US dollar. So that makes the American investor particularly easy to invest internationally. So those are the very popular the ETF at the national level. Their performance track those national indices. And then this is the end of this entire topic. We have chapter 15, 12, and 13. And so this is it for this entire semester. And we have the group assignment that is going to due this coming Thursday. So just give you another reminder, we have a group research project report due on 2 days from today. That will be Thursday. And then on Thursday, I would send you an email announcing what kind of final exam that will be in the form of a report that you will need to perform. Okay, so until then, see you.